For all the people analytics professionals out there looking to add greater value to the hiring process and help your hiring managers more effectively bring on the talent that they need, this is going to be a video where I take you through how to transform the insights from the applicant tracking system into meaningful data for your hiring managers. So stick with me. Hey everybody, my name is Daniel MacDonald and I work to make workforce science more simple for all of you out there trying to do the work. So let's jump right in. One thing that I've learned over the years is that business leaders who are trying to make their teams more effective do not speak applicant tracking system. So as much as we would like as HR professionals to speak about things on our terms, it's really important to be putting the insights on the hiring process in the terms of the people that you're serving. So let's take a look at how that might work. First, just to set the stage, a little bit of research. We look here at the PwC CEO survey, and there's a number of different things that CEOs are telling us are inefficient. And unfortunately, a few of them are HR processes. How do we help our end users get more value? If we think about the importance of the hiring process and bringing in new talent to the organization, this is huge. We can make such a big difference if we could even just cut this inefficiency perception in half. And the way I found out about that survey was I listened to this podcast by Josh Bearson. If you're in our field, you know Josh Bearson. This is a link on Spotify. What's wrong with the recruiting department? He'll say in the podcast that he actually admires recruiters, certainly the talent acquisition function. But one of the things that we're working against is a very complex process that isn't perceived as adding a lot of value. And so for that reason, it tends to get outsourced. It can be highly complex, bureaucratic, costs a lot. Sometimes we're hiring a lot of people, sometimes we're not hiring a lot of people. And so talent acquisition partners, unfortunately, are getting laid off. And we tend to overhire because we're not necessarily planning. We're just executing on open requisitions based on inputs from line leaders and not necessarily looking at things in a holistic manner. So let me share what I see as a common scenario. On the left-hand side, we have the business line manager. Basically, the things that they're measured on are productivity, sales, delivering client value, making sure that projects are being delivered on time. And one of the things that they're realizing when they look around is that they don't have the people that they need to help them deliver. And they say to the recruiter, what's going on? Can I get an update on the hiring process? And essentially, the recruiter is measured on different things. How many applications they're getting into the talent pipeline, how many roles are being filled, what's the time to fill those roles, what's the cost to hire the employees, and then also there's the diversity and inclusion metrics now that are so important, making sure that we're hiring people in an inclusive way and getting diversity across our organization. So really a complex task, but unfortunately, when we talk about outcomes and measurements, the two are not directly aligned. And so let's take a look at what the recruiter has available to them, right? And so this is what we call an applicant tracking system. We know these well on the user end. We're entering our information, we're entering our resume, and we're submitting our interest to the talent team, asking them to consider our application. So we get those applications and we can see here on the back end, the number of applications that are coming in on a daily basis, which is great. We're looking at what are the sources of the applications, right? Some sources cost more than others. Sometimes we're posting jobs, sometimes we're attending job fairs, sometimes we're hiring external agencies to fill these roles. So we want to see what's the most successful source, and we see a breakdown here of the number of candidates by source. And in this case, we see that many of them are coming through internal referrals, which is actually a very low cost, highly productive way for candidate selection. On the top right-hand side, we see where are the candidates in the hiring process. We see there's a pipeline, there's certain stages that the applicants are going through. Maybe their application is being reviewed, maybe they've been invited to an interview, maybe there's going to be a second line interview, maybe there's an offer out, and then maybe, we don't see one in this case, but maybe it's hired. Then we also see another report that the applicant tracking systems often give us, or we call it a pass-through rate, is what kind of percentage of applicants are getting through to the next stage. And then, often we're looking at that from a demographic point of view. What's the gender? What's the race or ethnicity if they're a US candidate? But then the problem is, how do we actually translate that into terms that the hiring manager is going to want? So what are the questions that we should be answering instead? The hiring manager might be asking, this is pre-talent acquisition, but they would need to understand, how do I staff my team to meet the demand that's being given to me? And what's the estimated cost to do that? And so that's all work that's being done prior to the talent acquisition or recruiting stage. But then they want to know, okay, what are the requisitions that are open against that plan? So if we do make a plan, what are the requisitions that are open? And then how many have been hired? How many are on board? How many are in the pipeline? How many could we expect in the near future who might be further in the pipeline than others? If they're not onboarded yet, when will they join? What's the projected headcount that I'll have once I hire all these roles? What's the impact to my budget? And can we afford it? So over time, sometimes it takes 90 days to fill these roles. By the time 90 days goes by, the business case might be completely different. We might have different priorities and we might have different affordability. So we might need to speed up, we might need to slow down. So these are all things that we need to put in context for the business manager when we go back to them with the information on hiring. And so what I would propose is, rather than focusing on the information that we have available, let's focus on the story that we're trying to tell. First, the success of the business is a function of its people, their talent, and their cost. Those could be people internal to the company. That could be people that we're going to find out on the street and we're going to hire in. And so all of this is a holistic view, recognizably not all a recruitment question, but certainly something that we want to be putting in context when we're talking about hiring is, who are the people that we're bringing in? What are the skills that we're adding? What's the cost of those skills? And how does that compare to the overall plan? And so in order to have it compared to a plan, you actually have to have a workforce plan. It needs to start there, which is actually pre-talent acquisition. And then what are the actions that we're trying to deliver? How many people are we trying to hire? And how far along are we on that path? And then what are the recommendations going forward for the hiring team so that they can engage and they can say, okay, these are the roadblocks. Let's get past those roadblocks. Let's take this action and close this role. So the next step for the team would be to curate the data, right? You understand what the story is that you're trying to tell. And sometimes that data is not immediately available. You need to then create an architecture in the background to be able to tell that story. And then within the applicant tracking system, you would have detail on every single application that came in. Who is the person? What are the stages that they're at within the job selection? And then historically going back. So not only what's happening today, but how has this changed since last month or last quarter? This is all information that you're going to need in order to be able to tell the story properly. So let's take a look at what this would look like on the back end. Right. On the left-hand side, we have the hiring manager perspective of the world. There's some point of time that the hiring manager would sit with the HR business partner or the talent lead or even their line leadership and say, these are the roles that I'm looking to hire for. This is the priority. This is the estimated cost. And then the business is going to say to them, okay, compared to what we can afford, this is the way that this is going to break down. And they would give you some sort of finalized version of the hiring plan that might not include actually the entire wish list. It might only be half of the people that they're looking to hire, but it's going to be the most important ones. It's going to be the ones that they have agreed are the priority and we can move forward on. And so that hiring plan, we then take and we use that as a framework to build out the main hiring tracker, which is going to be a combination of applicant tracking system information, the applications themselves, the status of the job, as well as the hiring plan so that we can create a holistic view that goes back to the hiring manager when we're done. And so we can see here already, rather than just having a single view of a single job role, how many applicants are they getting by day? What's the demographics of those applicants? We're able to put this into a context for the team so that we can drive conversation around, are we on the right path? Are we achieving what we need to achieve? Let's celebrate the wins that we've achieved already. Let's look at the things that we haven't achieved yet and how what are some blockers for us to be able to move forward. The next step is a back-end view when we think about data architecture. And for many of you, I hope I don't lose you, stick with me another 2 minutes. All I'm trying to say here is that it's important to get the data right on the back end so that you can then create a visualization that supports the story. It's going to have all the information from the plan, line by line, manager by manager, role by role. We're then going to have an adjusted level of detail that gets added in maybe after you get the initial request for a new requisition. And then we have the total rewards piece, which, when we hire a candidate, maybe the salary is going to be more or less than the budgeted amount. So we want to make sure that we record that. And we're going to have the job status coming from the applicant tracking system saying, okay, this job is currently open and we have candidates in final interview stage, or we're still sourcing candidates. We plan based on the stage of the open requisition, we plan that it might close within a certain amount of time. This is how many days it's been open so far. This is how many applications that we've gotten. If we have hired the person, when were they being onboarded? Have they been onboarded already? Are they expected to be onboarded soon? Right. This is all information that could feed into downstream processes like onboarding. And so once you get that architecture settled, it's going to be much easier for you to paint the story. Granted, this is not a final dashboard, but what this is this is pivot tables around the information that you've gathered. So it's really going to be a starting point for you to be able to create those views. And so here are just a few examples that I've put together, where now we're looking at the overall hiring picture. So we had 25 requisitions, 19 of them are open, 6 of them have been hired. Of those that have been hired, half of them are on board, another half are to be onboarded. We can see actually, we could drill down into the information when they're going to be onboarded, when we can expect those resources to join. We can see what they actually signed for against the budget. And for those roles that are still open, the 19 roles, we can see, how many are in final interview stage, how many are in screening, how many are in sourcing. Right. So this is all information that the hiring managers are going to be able to use to say, okay, we're 24% to plan. We expect, another 8 are going through final interview stage. So let's say 6 of those might close in relatively soon. And then another 11 are completely open. So, we'll be at about 50% maybe by the end of the month. And, we're looking to get to 100%. And so then you can start having a discussion around, what are the things that are happening on those 19 open roles to be able to close them more quickly. And then if we drill down into kind of the job level detail, right? So we have the number of applicants per role. We have the average days open. We can see what dates the people are going to be joining for the job roles that have been hired. This is all information that's going to play into kind of like a more context for the hiring managers to say, okay, this is where we are relative to where we need to be. We can highlight some of the things where we think there are problem areas. For instance, manager 4 has an accounting manager role that's been open for 50 days. Is that a reasonable amount of time? Maybe, we then have to have a conversation about, are they accepting requests for interviews quick enough? Are they not seeing the candidates that they want to see for this role, right? So this is all information that's going to then lead to the next point of conversation, where hiring managers and talent acquisition partners, the recruiters, can engage in a discussion on what needs to be done. So that was a long journey. Let me go back to what I was saying. But essentially, in order for us to communicate effectively with our hiring managers, we need to be speaking in terms that matter to them. It's pretty simple, really. And so when we look on the left-hand side, the information that's available to us, we have applicant tracking reports that focus on things from a recruiter point of view. But in a lot of ways, this isn't information that's really the most important to the hiring manager. The hiring manager wants to know, okay, how many open positions are there? How many new roles have been created? How many people have been hired against that plan, right? What's the total cost so far, or what's the expected cost? What's the cost year to date? Maybe the business plan is changing. Maybe we had a really good quarter. Maybe we had a really bad quarter. We need to be speeding up or slowing down. This is all information that we can be now communicating in a bespoke way to the hiring managers based on the information that we've collected and the architecture that we've created in the background, independent of the applicant tracking system reporting. So hopefully that was useful to you. Thank you very much for your time. Again, my name is Daniel McDonald, and visit Talentrix.com, where we're making workforce science more simple.